Hi, this is Eileen Spillane from Befriending Death, and I just wanted to talk about the dying process a little bit here. I often get questions about how do I respond in the dying process and how do you meet that experience? Obviously, it depends on whether the person is an anticipated death. If this is a sudden death and the person did not want to die, you would act in a responsive way and call 911 and initiate CPR. So, if you are not certified in CPR, you can do so through the American Heart Association. There's lots of different classes can, offered locally. You can just Google BLS or CPR classes. So if you encounter a body that is not conscious, you would check for a pulse, and you would do so. You can just check right by on your own body right now just by taking your two fingers here and putting it like here's your throat and just off to the side of your throat, and you just feel for pulsations. And you want to give that about 5 to 10 seconds. And then if you don't experience any kind of palpation of a pulse, you also want to be looking to see if there's any breathing. Um, so you could see that by a rise and fall of the chest. You might hear breathing, either kind of experience, and then you know that that person is breathing. But in any case, you would be calling 911, and ultimately you want to get an AED or a defibrillator, and you would see lots of those in stores, in airports, in restaurants, in gyms. You can just kind of notice if you're going to a place on a regular basis. You can just notice so that you could be at least the person who gets the defibrillator for someone. Now, if you come upon a body that is cold and not breathing and without a pulse, that is likely someone who has not died within a recent period of time, and any kind of resuscitative measures would be likely ineffective in that case. So, just to give a little bit of a perspective on that, if you if you encounter someone who is an anticipated death, that's really different. And that's where we're going to talk about most of that conversation here. So, this could be somebody who is a loved one in your life who might be on hospice, or you just anticipating that their death may come. This is a different kind of scenario. And so you want to remember that this is not an emergency. So this could be a situation where someone has actually had some input into their wishes and how they wanted to experience the dying process. And that's what's so great about using hospice, is that you have that time and space to sort of plan and discuss what your wishes might be and who you might want to be spending time with and where your location is if that's within your control. Sometimes that will be met in the hospital, sometimes in a skilled nursing facility, or some kind of other home, or it could be in the person's home residence in their bedrooms, or something like that, or the living room. So ultimately, in these situations, when death does come, it's really helpful to remember that that's not an emergency, and that it's time to just take a pause and take a breath and bear witness to what is happening, because it's a really sacred moment. It's like birth, how birth is a sacred moment. It's one of the most intimate experiences you'll have in your life if you're bearing witness for. So, if you haven't been with someone when they've died, it might seem like a scary experience, but it doesn't have to be. It can help if you have some company with you. If you find that you're by yourself, you can call, a friend, or someone connected to this person. Um, yeah, and just sort of check in with yourself in that moment. Like, How are you feeling? It's often common to feel a sense of shock and disbelief, and common to have like strong emotions show up, such as grief and helplessness, maybe even anger, um, even sometimes numbness, where you feel like you're kind of just going through the motions, but you're kind of checked out. And this can be the case even when it's anticipated, even when you've been knowing that this is coming. When it actually does happen, it's pretty common to just experience a sense of strong emotions or shock, and just know that that's okay. And just to remember, like, at this point, it's not a medical emergency. It's a social event. It's a community event. It's time to be together and honor this person's passing. So in the days and even the months, weeks, days coming up before the death, there's a lot of changes that happen with the body, and people will often have a decreased appetite, where they're taking in less food and drink. And this can be challenging for people because in a lot of cultures, food is love, and we want to feed, we want to take care in that way. And so it's really important not to force that upon anybody. It's a really natural part of the process as the body is going through these changes. So you should never force anyone to eat or drink, especially if they're not conscious. That's really important, not to feed or give drinks to anyone if they're not conscious, because they could choke. And so a lot of times there's change in their breathing, and the breathing may become fast or shallow. Sometimes will be irregular, and there's often pauses in the breathing where they'll breathe regularly, and then it will seem like they stop breathing, and then the breath will come. And sometimes those pauses are long, and they're often mouth breathing. They're not, as they come towards the end of their life, they're not often breathing through their nose. So at times they may purse their lips and breathe like this, you know. Their mouth can get quite dry in that case when they're doing a lot of mouth breathing. They might also experience like air hunger in a way, where they feel difficulty catching their breath. And if that's the case, it can be helpful to have a window open, or a gentle fan blowing on their face. Um, there's also something known as terminal secretions, or the death rattle. And it's just a scary name, and it sounds worse than it really is. And it happens because there's just extra fluid that's just not getting cleared in the back of the throat or the lungs. And it's really more difficult for us to bear witness to than it is actually on the person doing the breathing. So that can be minimized by medications that dry up the secretions, and it can also change based on a position change. And the most important part of that is just to know that it's a normal process, that there's nothing to fix really. It's just, it feels kind of difficult to listen to. And then it can be really helpful to have a calm environment for this person. And if this is an anticipated death, they may have some input in what their wishes are. You know, for some people, they might want to listen to prayers, audio recordings of prayer, or someone reading prayers to them, or listening to chants, or favorite classical piece of music, something that they have input in. And you might also notice what's happening to the body, or are the eyebrows furrowed? Does it look like there's some level of tension arising in the body in some way, any kind of discomfort? And that can guide you in the choices of how you might change the environment. You might also have like some aromatherapy, but for others that might be too strong. They might not want fragrances or any kind of aromas. So you can kind of just have that input ahead of time if possible, and just kind of gauge moment to moment. And then as the body starts the dying process, circulation towards the heart and lung is more of the focus, and the periphery gets less blood circulation. So the other organs will get less blood flow, and the hands and the feet will often change in temperature and color. So the hands and feet might become very cold, and or the digits or extremities may become bluish or purple. And just know that that's really normal part as the body is moving into the dying process. Depending on where the disease process is, different organs will be impacted based on that. So if there's liver disease, there may be a yellowish hue to the skin or the eyes, like the whites of the eye might become more jaundiced or yellow, and the kidneys will shut down, producing less urine, um, and then there'll also be, obviously the processes of peeing and pooping will still be going on. You'll want to be checking on that, or having a caretaker, if that's the case, be checking on that. You want to also be changing the person's position every so often, like every hour or two, if that unless that feels like that's creating a sense of pain or discomfort for them. Could be helpful to do that. And as the body has less oxygen circulating, there's something called hypoxia, where there's less oxygen in the blood system, in the cells, in the tissues. And sometimes that can add to a sense of confusion or restlessness for the person. They might actually get squirmy and be moving around quite a bit. Um, Sometimes they'll be picking at things that are not actually even there, or they're picking at their clothes. And there is medication that can be given for that. Some people want to actually have an unmedicated, conscious death. So that would be something you might want to talk about. At what point in the dying process do we support you? Do we give you medication? Because it's a real fine balance between medication and sedation. So it might be that we're medicating the people around us rather than the actual person, because it feels like, oh, they seem uncomfortable, I'm uncomfortable watching that, let's give medication. But if that person wants to have as much of a conscious death and is willing to tolerate some level of discomfort, that's something that you will want to have discussed ahead of time and manage your own level of comfort around that. um, there also sometimes is, they might seem like they're talking to someone who's not there, and they might often ref- reference like going on a trip, or sharing like a dream, prior to the dying process. They may get a visit through some unconscious experience. So positioning is really helpful. So positioning to support the breathing is really important. So you want them to be upright as much as possible. It can be helpful also to put pillows under the arms, because in a way that really expands the lungs, and it gives them a little bit more opportunity to breathe more easily. They may be on oxygen, um, or they may not be. If they are, it can be pretty drying to the mouth. So between the oxygen and mouth breathing, it's helpful to just, bring a washcloth, a cool washcloth, just a little dab, maybe with a mouth swab, just to allow the tissues in the mouth to feel a little bit more hydrated. And again, reminding anybody that you don't want to be feeding or forcing fluids, but just a little dab of some ice water on a swab can be really helpful. Um, when I volunteered at Zen Hospice as a Zen Hospice volunteer, there were these 5 invitations that we practiced that I think are helpful to remember when we're being present with the dying. And the first one is don't wait. So, and that goes, well before the dying process too, to not wait to share. that you love this person, or that you're sorry, or you forgive them, or maybe you want their forgiveness, but you don't really want to be having that intensity at the moment of their death. So not to wait until the end to have that conversation. And the second one is welcome everything. So there's going to be lots of different experiences in the dying process, and some of them will be pleasant, some of them will be unpleasant. So is there a way that you can turn towards all of it and welcome all of it? Well, nothing's left out. There's whether it's body odors and smells, or bodily processes, or emotional difficulties, whatever it is there a way to be present and welcome everything and push away nothing? So welcoming everything and not pushing anything away. Um, and is there a way to bring your whole self to the experience? That's the third one. So what does that look like for you? You know, that's a question that we'll all have to ask ourselves. And then to find a place to rest in the middle of things. And I think this one is really important because it's a long process, the dying process sometimes. I mean, sometimes it's sudden and quick, but there's still the caring for ourselves and our family and our friends and all of our community afterwards. And there's still a process of, funeral or memorial service or whatever honoring that happens later. And so it's not a sprint. So how do we manage taking care of ourselves, and what does that look like, and rest and feeding ourselves and getting out in nature and getting a walk, and finding that right balance of, okay, there's too many people here. I'm going to act as a gatekeeper, or ask people to leave, or maybe it's time for me to check out, or involve other people to step in and support. And then the fifth one is cultivating don't know mind. And for people who've done this before, whether you're a death doula, end of life doula, hospice worker, nurse, physician, you may have been present for many, many deaths, but we don't know how this one's going to be. We think, oh, we know it's going to be X number of hours, or this is what it's going to look like, but really we don't know. And so it's helpful to remember that and bring in a sense of beginner's mind, or don't know mind. So um, when the person actually takes their last breath, it may feel like it's the last one, and there might be another breath. So just know, sometimes that does happen. um, and not everybody wants to be present in the room. And if that's the case for you, you don't need to be present in the room. You can be outside and be supportive of the people there. Um, Sometimes the person dying doesn't actually want company. We make the assumption that they do, but sometimes they don't die until everyone has left the room, and that may just be their preference, their choice. Energetically, it might feel easier for them to leave without having strong energetic pulls there, and that's okay. That's okay. Um, but once that last breath happens, sometimes there's still like a movement in the body. There's still air being released, sometimes bodily fluids that are being released, and just know that that's still normal. That's all part of the process. And there's no urgency after the person dies to call 911, especially if um, this is not an emergency. Like, it's not someone who wanted to be resuscitated. This is a planned, anticipated death. Then you really want to not call 911. You want to take your time. You want to be with this person. You want to, from the movie Zen and the Art of Dying, Zenith says, it's time to put the kettle on. It's time to, oh, this is a sacred moment. I can be present for this, and the people who are with me. And like in the case with my father, he died. He happened to be on hospice and died at home in his bedroom, and he had the priest come and give him last rites. It was really beautiful. He was alert for that and spoke to the priest and died, you know, maybe 12 hours after that. And my mom pulled up a chair and did the rosary, said the rosary with him, with his body, and it was really beautiful. It was like just a gorgeous thing to witness. And so for each one of us, that'll be a different ritual, a different, presence, depending on what that person desires or what you desire. In the case for my mother died in the hospital, and I happened to be with her for that as well. And I said the rosary, for her, and I also said loving kindness meditation for me. And it's a way that you can both support yourself and the other person as they're transitioning. So um, once once enough time has gone by, and the people who want to be with the body has had their time, then you can call the funeral home or whatever arrangements that you have set up after. And if the person is on hospice, you can let the hospice team know. And if that's not established, you can call 911. But it's really important to wait before calling 911, and really important to have the POST form, um, Physician Order of Life Sustaining Treatment, also known as a MOLST, Medical Order of Life Sustaining Treatment, or Do Not Resuscitate form, so that the paramedics know when they arrive, because that they are emergency responders. So they are going to see this experience as something that they need to resuscitate unless you show them otherwise. And so it's really important, because once that happens and they come into the home, it's going to change the energy significantly. And you have a lot of control over that before that happens. So, so just waiting until that happens. If you do have a funeral home already, picked out, you can call the funeral home and notify them, and then they'll come and they will put the body in a bag, and sometimes carry it out on a stretcher. And it's helpful to know that it may be upsetting to actually see that happen for someone, to see that final act of them being inside a bag or covered. So, you can have someone be in a different room when that happens. For others, when I worked as a volunteer at Zen Hospice Project, it was really beautiful, because we would bathe the body, and that's an option for the family and friends if they wanted to do that. I've had other students in my course say, I do not want anybody bathing my body. So, having part of that discussion ahead of time. But we would cover the body, once the body was in a bag, we'd cover it with a sheet and beautiful flowers as they exited the home. And, it's up to that person and whoever's part of that planning, um, discussion, to figure out what serves that person and the family best. And it can be helpful. There's usually people who are not as connected to the person, who are there as support, and maybe they're helping arranging food and support. But it can be helpful for them maybe to clean the room that when this person's body has now left, maybe change the sheets, tidy up the medical equipment, that kind of thing. And then just to be in community and figure out, like, what is it right now that I need to nurture myself? What is it? Do I need a walk? Do I need to be out in nature? Do I need a meal? Do I need a shower? Because it is, this is also part of finding a place to rest in the middle of things, because this isn't an ending, but it's still the middle of a big process. And there will be more planning of, maybe honoring this person's life with an obituary, or arranging a funeral or a memorial, and, um, you know, what is the best way to do that in a way that serves you and your community and the person. So I hope that helps in giving you a sense of understanding of what to expect. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and let me know, and happy to address them.